a business that was there to a business that is very much there. Um, uh, it's been a bit flat between last year, this year, about 17,400 odd crores, but that was expected because one of the businesses got quite a bit affected on this pandemic was PTND, because the last 1 month of, or maybe even the last 2 months, we didn't realize the supply chain was getting affected due to the various supplies that were coming from many parts of the world. And by the time we realized it, I guess it was a bit too late, and we took a hit on what could have been the final sales and profit numbers. But I don't want to take the thunder away from the fact that it's done fairly well under the circumstances. The the one grouse that I have, it's had 4 fatal accidents in the year 1920, one in Pondicherry, one in 765 Agra Noida job, and one in ERSS Medinipur Jira transmission line projects. We are yet to get over this transmission line fatalities. We tried every trick on the trade, tried use of technology and such. But I guess that is one bugbear which is still in the business. And of course, the traditional way of somebody opening up the line when work is going on and somebody gets electrocuted. These are the two fundamental ways in which people get affected in this business. We need to get away from it, because this is a matter which is taken seriously not only at the PTND level but also at the board level and at my level, board level, and other places, and we get hammered for it. So it's high time we moved away from these fatalities and something has to be done about it. One way is to talk about it, but one way is to take serious actions at site to move away from it. The good thing about the business got a healthy backlog, 42,900 crores, let us say 42,000 odd crores the backlog. There are about 10,000 crores in this which needs to be moved out, in the sense that these are orders taken. Some of the MOUs have to be converted into actionable items. The Ethiopian order, few other one or two other orders in the domestic market. We need to act on it fast, because at this point of time, if you have the entire 42,000 crores moving, that can help us to get back the sales momentum that we had lost in the first 1.5 months or 2 months. And I would guess that the leadership is seriously looking to how to move these orders under the circumstances. So that, I would say, is one target to be had from the overall point of view, to move the non-moving backlog or slow-moving backlog, or yet to be converted backlog. Now, this is something we should do. The business has done well and has got a fairly decent share of the market in India, both the substations as well as the transmission lines and switchyards. I keep, started as 11 kV, moved to 220 kV, 450 kV, 750 kV, even to 1200 kV. And when Mother Das took over the leadership, it came back to 1 voltage and 2 voltage and things like that. But okay, these are part of life. You move into the places where you get an opportunity, and therefore he did that. So I have no grouse against it, but one tends to move into higher voltage and don't want to look at the lower voltage. But for various reasons, the business, we did it, and UPD business is that. It has done pretty well in the last few years. Till the election, we had great momentum. After the elections, the momentum slowed down a bit, naturally, because the old soul need for doing it was, the purpose was lost, and maybe as the next elections approach, it will pick up again. But having said that, we played a great part in electrifying more than 60,000 villages. And when you look at the map of India, as I keep telling to many people, if you look at it 10 years back and look at it today, or even 5 years back and look at the map of India today, much of northern and eastern India looks lighted. And that's a delightful thing to see from a point of view, because after so many years of the Earth's origin, there are people in this country who finally have a lamp or a fan on top of the head, which is a great thing to do. If you have noticed, in all our calendars, we put an young girl with a book in front of her eyes and with a small lamp on top. I think that's a delightful story to have, that we are transforming the parts of India which are still not seeing the daylight, as I would say. So PT India has done some pioneering work. The movement into, we realized long time back in this business that staying on to single geography India would not work, and we moved into Middle East in a significant manner, and that has helped us quite a bit. Middle East became a 1 billion business, which was very good, and we were there in most of the countries except, of course, Iraq, Iran, and Yemen, which are the countries not to go. But we've done well in all the countries. But today, Oman is a bit of a problem because the budgets have come down. Of course, we are bid for some big transmission jobs in Oman. If it clicks, that is a point to be taken forward. Otherwise, we have to relook at Oman at some point of time. But whatever it is, nevertheless, we are taking forward Oman as L&T India and not as L&T Oman. And that point is very clear, and we'll have to see how to move that forward, subject to pre-qualification and such. Africa as a territory we went into, there was a lot of apprehension in us as to how Africa will work out. It has worked out reasonably well. I had lots of doubts, but I think it has stabilized now. Last year ended at about 280 million or something, and I think this year's budgeted at nearly 375 or 375 odd million. I hope Rahul and team are able to push it to arrive at those numbers. We see the potential of getting very large value orders in Africa. Ethiopia is a good example of a big order that we've got. There are other MOUs that are possible and fairly profitable, but we need to pursue it and go behind it. In my view, when India is going to struggle for capex and Middle East because of the oil prices a bit down, which is a double whammy from a PT&D point of view, because two of their best markets are slightly looking down. One way to look at it is whether we can go into Africa and make something out of it, because we are already in 10 countries there and some promising countries. And that's the way to go forward. I would also like to appreciate the leadership because they listened to everything that was said, and they developed a good organization in Africa instead of leaving it to bit by bit. In north of Africa, you have Rajput. In upper East Africa, you have Gupta. And lower East Africa, we have Rajan there. And now we're thinking of upper West Africa. We need to create a leadership there. But once you create a cluster head or a segment head for that area, name it properly, you develop the necessary organization of HR and accounts and MAS and planning and such, procurement and such, and then it is able to move in a proper format to take it forward in proper procedures without major mishaps. Or even if there is a mishap, it gets to be warned early, and one is able to take into account that to see how to move it. So that's the right way to go forward, and I think PT&D has mastered that. In similar way, Jones and team have developed a fairly reasonable organization in Far East. So we have jobs in Malaysia, Vietnam, Thailand, and Myanmar now. We need to push these jobs faster. We need to create a name for itself. As most of us know, Far East is a fairly established market with good Korean and local companies and maybe even Chinese companies there. Therefore, it's not been easy to get there. But I think we have about $150 million of sales, and maybe this year will be $200 million of sales. But we have some very good jobs in Myanmar and Thailand, but we need to see how to push it and make a bigger name for ourselves in that part of the world, which is slightly more competitive than maybe Africa. The one point with this business is heavy dependence on government jobs. There's hardly any private job because we moved out of industrial electrification some time back because of lower margins and no market being existent. So we are heavily dependent on government jobs, whether it is state government, whether it is international governments, whether it's multilateral funding through the governments, whether it's MOU jobs, and therefore it's a preponderance of dependence on government jobs. So we need to be worried about the ability of the governments to fulfill their obligations. We need to worry about other kitsch things that happen when dealing with government. We need to be worried about doing jobs on time. When you look at PT&D today, out of maybe 450 active jobs, hardly 4 or 5 jobs are going on time. Rest all the jobs are delayed for some reason or the other, which is not a healthy sign to have. The delays may be due to whatever reasons, and maybe at times due to client reason, environmental reason, consultant's reason, or delays in right of way, etc. But at the end of the day, the jobs are delayed. We are not quoted for the delays, then we wouldn't have got the job in a competitive situation. We are quoted to do the jobs on time. And when the delays occur, I think the cost is absorbed by us and very little reimbursement is going to be given by clients. We need to be worried about it. We need to be bothered about it. I don't have a solution right now for that except to say that all the lovely project directors and construction managers listening to this conversation should apply their mind to see that their paramount duty is to push the jobs to its logical conclusion, whatever the case may be, whatever the need may be. PT&D has developed a very good procurement system, centralized, and that is what economizes its needs and requirements and scale with various big vendors that they deal with and tries to get the best of prices. But I think at some point of time, I keep telling to Madhav Das, I used to tell it to the late Kesavan who unfortunately passed away, a very good gentleman, if I can say so. And now the new gentleman, Joji John, who has come in, that we need to think of innovative ideas to go behind vendors. Vendors know all our ideas of how we negotiate. Vendors know how we talk to them. Vendors know our requirements. Vendors know the way we talk and the hierarchy, the how it works. They got used to it because these are all big names like ABB, the Siemens, and the Schneiders and the Doosan's and whatever you have, the LG cables and the Alsavedi and other. Everybody knows us now, and they know how we behave, how we talk, how we act, so on and so forth. So we need to get innovative ideas to deal with these vendors because otherwise they're going to get used to us. And if you look at the profitability of an ABB or a Siemens, it's fantastic when compared to ours. It's very good when compared to ours, even under the circumstances. That means they know how to manage us, and we think we've got a great price out of them, but their profitability is much higher than ours. So there's something we're leaving on the table every time we negotiate, and therefore, I guess we have to think of other fantastic ways of dealing with it. I just had the occasion to sign a work order today for on behalf of Smart World Communication for Cisco. They have negotiated so good. At least I'm praising it for the time being. I don't know how this will result at the end of the day, but for the moment, make hay while the sun shines, so to say. They negotiated a 165 crore contract in such a manner to them for basically supplying routers, switches, and network solutions, etc. That the first payment to them is after 12 months, and the entire payment is them over 33 months, and Cisco is giving them at a rate of interest of 3%, including foreign exchange fluctuations. And that is, Cisco Capital is also getting involved in it. And the entire payment is pushed back, and thereby a job which was taken with a negative cash flow at the moment looks totally positive. The only thing that we have not been able to get out of the negotiations is we pay to them per time and not as per execution. If there's an execution delay, then the cash flow can get affected. But the job goes with the time built delays, with built-in delays, then we make a positive cash flow. But this is a new thing which has come. When I went to Cisco's headquarters in San Jose, I did speak to Irwin Tan, their number two man, and I told Irwin that there's a mismatch between what we get from the clients and what we have to pay you to come out of the way. And he looked at this Cisco Capital as a way to look at it. And at a ridiculous interest rate, they come to us to take it forward. So it's a different way of going about it. It has worked in this case, and I don't know whether with ABB, Siemens, and Doosan, etc., this can work, but this is an idea to put in your mind. We've done well in Qatar. Karama has been a good job. One of the jobs was pretty bad, but I think K13, etc., is pretty good job. We're expecting some more very big orders from Karama and Qatar. The point is this unusual payment clause from Qatar, from Karama and Qatar, which exposes a lot of money and keeps a lot of money on the table. Whatever we do, we have been unable to solve the problem. I met the CEO of Karama many times. I guess Madhav and Ravi and now Rao met him many times. We are unable to sort it out. There's something with the auditor keeps banging us on every year, saying that the payment is back-ended. That's the contract, but we are unable to swing it any other way, and Karama continues to come with contracts of that nature. There's something which you have delivered, but I just thought I'll mention it because this is something on the mind whenever the auditors visit us. I think Madhav Das has also formed a small task force to collect old stage retentions and outstandings. I think the task force under Ramanathan has played a very good part in extinguishing many old retentions and such. This is a good idea that has come into the table because if you look at PDND, it's got multiple jobs because the ticket size of orders are not very big. And of course, 80% of the order values are all procurement, and therefore that is okay. But having said that, it was a good idea to create this task force to liquidate many of these very old retentions because they're hanging for some small rectification works or that or this and this and that. And that an effort has been taken to bring that down is very good. We have opportunities in MOU jobs, in TBCB jobs, and and to a certain extent in some different kinds of HVDC and such other jobs that were coming. We need to grab these opportunities to the fullest extent to keep the order inflow moving so that the sales keep moving. One of the complaints I have is the sales seems to be stagnating at about that 18,000 crores, and we don't seem to have a wherewithal to push it up. The order inflow is also stagnating at about 21, 22, 25,000 crores and doesn't seem to be moving up. If we have to grow incrementally, if we have to go beyond the point, as one would say, then we have to see how to get in more orders. And of course, one is aggressive to the point that the margins are protected. But at the end of the day, within the borders of areas that we operate, India, Middle East, to some extent Africa and Far East, we are not able to go beyond it. The idea of geographical diversification was to grow bigger. And that doesn't seem to be happening, because when we get into Africa, Middle East goes down. And when we get into Middle East and Africa, India seems to be having a capex problem. And when all these three have a problem, then you have the COVID and the oil price crisis. So we don't seem to be going beyond the bar. Now, we cannot keep expanding geographically beyond a point, because that's all the bandwidth that we have. That's all the leadership capability we have. I think this is where the point comes in, that people in PT&T have to be flexible. Now, you had many of you have had great careers within India and Middle East. Both are reasonable countries to live in. India, okay. Middle East, fairly sophisticated. Many of you earn 3 times the salary that even I have earned in my career most of the time. But having said that, when you get into Africa, of course, you see more monkeys and tigers and lions, not tigers, maybe lions and giraffes and elephants somewhere. But having said that, we also give you hardship allowance and slightly a better allowance there. I told Madhav Das that for the next promotion at senior levels, unless you have spent a stint in one of the countries for 2 to 3 years, promotions are going to be difficult. Otherwise, we cannot continue this exercise of geographical expansion. People have to be bold enough to say, I'll go into this lovely, vast continent called Africa. It's a very nice place. I visited it many times. It's a lovely place to go. It's a great place for a holiday. It also is a lovely place to work, because people want to work there. People are serious, sincere, and they're hardworking people. And the kind of muscle power they have is far better than what many of us have in that sense. And these are hardworking people who've trained properly and put onto the job. I think that's a good place to go, and therefore senior people have to take a stint as country head, or if there's a very big job, to even take as a head of a job, to spend 2-3 years before they get the next promotion and come back. I think this has been mandated, and this will be the way to go forward. Otherwise, we cannot continue this geographical expansion. The fact is also that recently we have tried some new experiments of getting into new areas like microgrid, like EV charging, the modular substations. Of this, the idea that has really worked out is modular substations. Been requesting that a proper structure be created there, so that this can be standardized, modularized, and pushed faster, because the whole idea is, why can't you just do it in your factory and send it across and quickly go install it somewhere, instead of doing that 20-30% of site work that we do. This idea is to catch on and be pushed faster. Solar is another great growth area for us. We've been reasonably okay in India. The profitability is still in doubt. One year it makes a profit, next year it goes down. This business, at one point of time, I even wanted to close it. Then RSR was, Madhav and RSR took a look at it, and RSR said, let it continue for one more year. Shaji John promised a turnover of 1,000 crores and 100 crores. Just about it happened. Then next year again it tripped. So it's a hop, step, jump, and hop, step, and jump kind of business. Now we brought in an extremely senior person, Ravindran, to head this business. We moved him out of Middle East, which was not an easy decision to do. And now I hope Ravi and team, along with Shaji, works out to see that this business pumps up beyond itself. We are expecting we got a huge order in Dubai, in UAE. We're expecting a major order in Saudi Arabia anytime. And I hope these orders result in the incremental jump that we're looking at from this business. The new idea that we have thought about is digital solutions. So we brought in Frank from abroad. Frank, I think, has settled down. Louis, I think, right? He's settled down. And he's just started pushing these jobs. A lot of ideas are coming out of it. And I think if he makes a good sense and builds a good team and pushes this, I think this is a new remarkable area to be in for the future. And I'm sure this will be a game changer from an Indian point of view, because as much as I know, there's no other power transmission or similar company in India which has thought about this idea. We could be far ahead of the ship. This is what ABB and Siemens have done in some parts of the world. But with our innovative capability, with our thinking, with our experience of domain knowledge, I think we can change the bus out here in a totally rapid fashion. And we need to do it. And I wish him all the best to succeed in this area. And I hope that he builds a quick team of 500,000 people to do this at an utter fast speed. But I bet on this. And this can be more profitable. This can easily be a 40% margin business at EBDIT level. And that is the way one has to look at it and take it forward, because there's more maneuvers and maybe some applications and solutions at various levels. The key point of talking to you today was to stress on a few aspects, because we're just hopefully getting out of this pandemic season. We're get back to putting our socks and getting back to work. It's not that none of you have worked from home, but the big activity that we do, which is at sites, has not happened for various reasons. So we need to get back into that. And that's the main talk of this, that's the main focus of this webinar. In my opinion, the PTND's working capital was about 26, 27%. We brought it down to 25, then we brought it down to 21 in 18-19. Again in 1920, for various reasons, it's moved up to 27%. This is something which is a catastrophe for any business because we are using our money to finance clients. We need to find ways to get it back to 17, 18 or below 20 for sure. And it's not easy, I know that. There are a number of reasons why it's not easy, because you have this retention, you have stage payment, you have PAC, you have FAC, and God knows what else. But no business can run with such high working capital. I just can't agree to it. Your gross working capital is 337 days. Come on. That means the entire year's sales is going into funding gross working capital. It's not done. 16,000 crores is your gross working capital. That means as much money as your sales, you're putting back into the business for holding working capital. Nowhere this will be agreed to. What it does is, whatever money you earn, it's like your return on investment is badly suppressed. Now imagine the 16,000 crores is brought down to 8,000 crores. Your return on capital employed will shoot up double. You will become a 60-70% business. And that is the way to do a business. You have to learn to do business on clients' money or through innovative financing of your products and whatever it is. And I am also requesting Madhav Das and all of you at various site levels, at project levels, use this pandemic to your advantage. Every crisis is an opportunity. Please write to all your government clients saying that there's a pandemic. And everybody, trust me, knows that L&T has held back huge labor in its labor camp, fed them, housed them, treated them well, sanitized them, given them health checks, paid them wages, salaries, and treated them very well. And not very few of our workers have gone aboard this migration on the road. We have even afforded train tickets and bus tickets for them to go home. So we treated people very well. And use that to your advantage to tell these authorities, listen, we have spent money. And now this funny payment terms that you have on all these contracts that we have signed, can you make some amendments and give us money much faster than what we are eligible for or what we are due? I don't think one should feel ashamed about it. It's our right. We are asking, we have done the work. For some reason, we accepted those payment terms because these are government jobs. We do not have too much chance to argue. But today, under the circumstances, we have every right to ask them, listen, we have spent our own money. Can you help us out too? And that could be a game changer in the future. Now, I'll give you an example. There was this dedicated freight corridor jobs. We had all kinds of funny payment terms. I got on webinar with that DFCC chairman, Anurag Sachan, at least 5-6 times. And I can tell you every condition has been modified. I've practically bulldozed him on every condition and got it modified. Advance recovery has been deferred. Payment terms have been advanced. Arbitrations have been settled. Variations have been closed out. Rate increases have been agreed to, entire payment terms have changed. So it is possible. I thought it was not possible dealing with the government officials. They're very difficult. But I managed to force them to do it. And of course, Rajiv and Sen and others are involved. But it is possible to do. Where there's a will, there's a way. Where there is no way, you can find a way. That is the way pandemic is. So, this is this is a situation to be advantaged of, to be used to your advantage. So please, without hesitation, ask for better payment terms. The decisions have to be fast. There's a great example which I said in the previous webinar, but I'll tell again for the sake of repetition. Recently I was in touch with a client and with a vendor. I can tell you who it is. It is Blue Star, and I think Madhav Das was listening to it. And he said to finalize an order from our B&F took 475 days from the starting to the end. I was a little taken aback because I didn't know how to reply for an instance on whether it was a joke or whether it was seriously that he was saying. But after that phone call, I checked with the supply chain head and he confirmed, but he gave me 10 reasons as to why it was delayed. But it is obnoxious. How can you take 475 days to finalize an order? What the heck are we up to as an organization? There's something wrong. This is not done. Of course, if I ask John, he will give me his own examples of 500 days that he has taken to finalize a transformer or substation. I'm just joking. I hope it is not there. But the fact is, why can't we optimize this time? Why can't we cut down this time? And at the end of the day, PTND is all about supplies. Well, you don't make it, somebody else makes it. You've got to buy it and put it there, but you've got to do it. And if you can't do it fast enough, it's got no meaning. I also been telling Mother Das this side thing that we do, the little substations and some concrete and fencing and all the thing that you do. You got to do it modularly. There's some method by which you have to find out by putting small precast yards here and there. Quickly do these things, take it and go stick it up. And therefore the site work becomes negligible or becomes a pass-through activity in the sense that the concrete work is also done modularly. The supplies are anyway coming from somewhere else. You just go stick it up there and work is over. Unless we do that, we got to prove in PT&D we are something different to the other competition that we have, the KECs and the Kalpatarus and Voltas and others. If we don't do that, there's what is the difference between us and them? We have size, they don't have maybe, but they'll catch up. So we got to do something different. And also I'm telling you, and I'm telling you, and I'm telling you, there will be a time when the Siemens and ABBs of the world, the Alstoms of the world, will find out a solution by which even a 765 kV substation is made in their factory, brought to site, lifted by a huge Chinook helicopter, brought to site and just erected there. I also got a fascinating worry that like radio waves are transmitted through for a mobile, maybe electricity can be transmitted through the air. You don't need a transmission line. Of course, Mother Das doesn't believe it can happen, but I certainly believe when lightning can get transmitted to the cloud, why can't power get transmitted to the cloud? So it's a fascinating theory for me, and I hope I don't live to see that because I want the PD&D business to grow. But having said that, there's a worry that it can happen, and therefore you've got to find solutions for all this. The most important thing is client relationship. I do understand that in your business, the chief engineers and even the power grid chairmen and others can keep changing very fast. But it is at whatever levels you are, whether it's assistant engineer, the deputy chief engineer, please develop relationship. At some point, it will be useful for some little help here and there, for some moderation of the contract conditions there and here. And therefore, it is important to maintain client relationship under the circumstances. Please, for heaven's sake, build on it. Be extremely cost conscious. This is a time when the company is going through probably one of its worst hit ever. It's not happened in 2002. It's not happened in the 9/11 crisis. It's not happened during the financial crisis. But today we are going through one of our worst crises. Cost has become a sublime importance for us because 2 months we have not worked. But the cost has worked. Sales has not worked, but cost has worked. And therefore the pileup of costs is inside the company. It's for 82 years, this company has paid its salary on 27th or 28th of the month for the previous month. Very few companies, I can tell you in the globe, can boast of this record. We continue to do that, and that's all a cost. We continue to maintain 160,000 laborers under very, very trying circumstances. There were many colleagues who came and told me, as soon as let them go, migrate, oh yeah, let them. We didn't do that. So having said that, the cost has been incurred, and it is there in our books somewhere, and it will come to hit us. Now, there's no method by which we can hang it somewhere. It is part of us now. And only way you can dilute it is by progressing faster, by billing faster. There are two things which are very, very important at the end of it, which you need to understand. Number one, you got to, that 8% margin that you have, you got to move it up to 10%. You got to get into double digits at some point of time by looking at different ways of doing the job, but doing jobs much faster. I guess if you can just do jobs faster in PT&D, by either modularity or by structurality or by some other method, I think the 8% can simply move to 10% because 2% is eaten away by time delays. Second is, in today's season, please chase cash, don't chase sales. Please chase cash, don't chase sales. Cash is superior to sales. Every site, everywhere, say, including in your procurement, please chase cash. That means delay your procurement. I mean, do your payment later. Find out innovative financing solutions like the Cisco example I gave you. Delay, try to see that cash is kept in hand. Easy to say all this, but I'm giving you examples of where it has worked, where I've been personally involved. And I think there's a solution everywhere, and we got to work out the solutions by grinding ourselves. There's no other way out of it. And last but most important thing to all these wonderful people, project directors, construction managers, ex-cluster heads who are listening to me, kindly push progress. Kindly push progress. Kindly push progress and billing. It's very, very important to us. I guess at PT&D today there are laborers at the camp are about 9,855. At site there are about 7,699 people. At locals we employ about 4,324. Roughly there are about 12,000 people who are working in all our laborers who are working in all our sites. 139 sites have started. But that's still a long way to go because we have too many sites. But it will be great if you can start pushing progress on all these sites and start billing. We need to have billing. We need to have this billing in our books somehow or the other. The first quarter sales is about 3,400 crores, and as per the numbers that I have, you will be at about 2,750 crores. My target to you is try to get to 3,250 crores, because possible, because 80% of yours is procurement, and in a way, technically, it is possible. It's my honest request to you. It's my attempt to you, because moment we get to billing, I think the cost will also get absorbed under it, and we can move forward. So, gentlemen and ladies who are listening to it, fantastic to have had the opportunity to address a great crowd, a great set of people, a sincere and a people who are pioneering, who have gone to many places, who do wonderful jobs in many parts of the world. This is the phase of L&T, and maybe the adventurous part of L&T, and maybe the pioneering part of L&T, which leads other ICs to follow you. You've set a great example. You have great expectations from yourself. You're probably the largest IC within the L&T system today, and therefore any cough on your side is pneumonia within the company, if I can say that. So there's an arduous responsibility on all of you to take it forward in that sense. So to end my conversation, cash is more important than sales. And two, please physically progress the jobs and get to billing as much as possible. Be safe, take care of your families and loved ones. Great good luck addressing all of you. All the very best, and God bless all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That was a really motivating address. I'm sure PT&D will keep up to your expectations and deliver to the revised targets that you have just set for them. Now, what better way to keep ourselves motivated? And I would like to invite Mr. R. Shankaraman, Whole-Time Director, Chief Financial Officer, to share with us his perspective of the situation and guide us being financially resilient in these tough times.
Thank you, Bharat. Good afternoon, everybody. I think it's good to speak to such a large gathering. In a very perverse way, I should thank the lockdown because we always had this technology possibly to reach out to all of you, but we never did. Somehow, it was not in our psyche that we should reach out through virtual mode as extensively as we have been doing for the past 2 months. So possibly, as they say, light at the end of every dark cloud. This is a new learning for all of us, and possibly this will keep us more engaged with the frontline soldiers of our company. I think I often used to wonder that some of us are so fortunate that we work in environments which are very predictable. But there's so many people out in the site who deal with uncertainty on a daily basis and are expected to put their best foot forward. Easily said than done, but so this corona-led disruption, which has made us awaken to the possibility of using technology to connect with you and engage with you. I think we should, even post-recovery period, we should try to do this and sustain this because it connects. Obviously, it's not two-way interaction, but at least it connects our thinking to your thinking, and through these question boxes and electronic way of communicating, we at least then establish a way to pick on each other's mind and to find strength in each other's thoughts and action and take the company forward. In a way, we are again very fortunate to be working in L&T. When I hear about the horror stories of companies in our space, engineering, construction, project management, infrastructure, most of them are very close to being broke. In fact, thanks to this COVID again, one of the audit requirements is to comment on the sustainability of the company, where the company will, the auditors have been mandated by law to check whether the company continues to be a going concern. Now, I'm very sure many companies will struggle to actually comply with this definition of going concern. L&T is fortunate that it doesn't have to worry about whether it will survive. It constantly keeps talking about how to beat the odds and grow. So, in a sense, I think as professionals, working professionals, we are very fortunate we have a platform where growth is the worry and not existence. if I really look back, PT&D has been a very silent and steady performer. There are different types of businesses in the company within the portfolio. Some are very loud not by people, but by the way they are. PT&D, on the contrary, has been something which quietly but very steadily accumulates. Maybe the order sizes, maybe the scattered nature of your jobs, maybe the need to stay humble because you constantly deal with government and public utilities all the while, has given a certain character to the business. And that character actually comes out as a very dependable business in our portfolio of businesses. Very few times, at least in my leadership career within the company, have I come across discussions about is PT&D under watch list in terms of are we poised to grow, are we likely to grow, are we likely to stagnate? I think that question has never come up. It has always been how PT&D is possibly finding newer ways of trying to attack growth and keep growing. The last couple of years possibly is an aberration in my opinion, that we have got stuck at a certain level of operations, and I am sure that with all our collective thinking we will be able to move it forward. But more than that, I think what also encourages me is our ability to find solution. I don't think Middle East was on the radar when India was possibly doing well. Middle East came onto the radar. Middle East was not an easy ride. We had a lot of tough knocks. We learned a lot of those lessons. We maybe still are learning some lessons in Middle East. SNS spoke about Karama, and so very true he is about how adverse the payment conditions can be. And sometimes you are aghast that people in that part of the world expect European standards for Korean prices. And how do you provide this kind of combination? And to some extent, I think areas like Africa and ASEAN has provided us further relief in terms of this growing dependence on Middle East. But we'll have to wait and watch as to how these pans out. But post IC structure, PT&D has been one of the first businesses to reach possibly 20,000 crores of orders and about 15,000 crores of revenue. So it was off the block pretty quickly, pretty swiftly. And then it is possibly dealing with the balancing that it has to do between the various state governments and the utilities that it has to deal with, its own quest to grow in scale, its own challenges to deal with different geographies and different customer profile, many of which is first-time customers, so we hardly know them well. We need to figure their, the likes, whims, and the idiosyncrasies. Safety has been a major concern, even in India. So in all these countries, it becomes that much more of a mandate to make sure that we don't lose productive time and life to poor safety standards. So as this COVID has struck us quite unexpectedly, there are several questions that are staring at us. First and foremost, and rightly so, which is the theme of this webinar as well, is to how to get back to normalcy, double quick and double safe. Because I think world is coming to deal with a new normal. Several things are changing, including the work practices and the requirements. So while even in the old standard, ensuring safety was such a challenge, under new standard it is going to be doubly challenging. But having said that, these are also opportunities for us to see how we can ramp up the execution. One good thing is most of the infra business, and particularly PT&D, does a lot in the second half of the year, and even within second half does a lot in the last quarter of the year. So to that extent, had this been, just imagine if this is front-ended, if the cycle was completely the other way and a lot of it was happening in the first quarter, then the loss of 2 months would be crippling. Fortunately for us, even though seasonality-wise we have lost good time, in terms of impact and volume, I think we have only lost a smaller portion of our turnover as compared to the larger portion which awaits us in the second half of the year. And secondly, I think unlike many companies, we are starting with a very, very healthy order book. And I think that should give us the confidence that we don't, even if order inflow is delayed by 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, because it will take time for all the ordering entities to find normalcy to their cash budgets. In fact, they are still busy grappling with what is the impact of this COVID-related distraction on their respective cash flows and their capex program. Be that as it may, while it might take 3-4 months for some normalcy to retire, and I do note Madhuvada's point about a lot of tenders being there, etc. But I still am a little worried about the finances of the power sector. The distribution companies, the FMS announced some relief, but in the past also reliefs have been announced, and to that extent the reliefs have not worked in a endurable manner. So we need to figure out how the current set of relief is going to change the culture of the discoms, which often place orders on us. We also have to make sure that the digital solution that SNS was speaking about, if those platforms can be used to make sure that the transmission companies are able to find economic health. Today, much of the ill is because the transmission company is not doing well off by collecting money that it ought to collect. So it doesn't pay the distribution company, or worse still, it sheds load. So the entire power cycle gets into some kind of a slow growth, low growth mode. But if digital solutions are leading to better customer analytics and leads to, on the back of privatization that the government is increasingly talking about, even in critical sectors, maybe we have a key to better customer behavior, better and hence hopefully better fund allocation. In any case, these are hopes. We need to keep clutching on to all these little straws that are made available to us to move our own prospects forward. COVID also really gives us an opportunity to pause and think as to what could change in our business world. If business is not going to be as usual, then what is it that will change and what will drive that change? So to that extent, the customer engagement that we spoke to about in context of trying to seek better payment terms, better terms of trade, and better settlement process, etc., and faster clearances of invoicing. While we do all that, it is also important to know how the customer is thinking about the future post-COVID. And it is important for us to see whether we need to align ourselves to such a thought process, and how rapidly we do will differentiate us from our competition. We also have this issue about is it going to be a demand constrained market or is it going to be a supply constrained market? As things stand today, my vote is for supply constraint, namely the supplier of services, the providers of money, the ability of the customers to raise the requisite funds for these programs could be more of a constraint than the need for power distribution, transmission, and the related developments like micro grids and modular substation. So how we mastermind and co-create opportunities along with funding agencies. And it is in this context that the work that is being done in Africa is remarkable, that we are trying to present an opportunity to a potential customer on a solved manner along with the funding support. If we need to draw some inferences from those and try to do it in the Indian context, maybe funding constraint will become less of an issue for us, and ability to co-create this opportunity along with financing institutions could become a better way forward. But of course, we must realize in India, much of the financing institutions are completely stressed. Both the banks and the non-banks have enormous amount of non-performing assets. So it's not going to be easy for them to develop the courage to take credit calls. But the government is, I think, doing its bit to improve liquidity for these sectors. On the back of this improved liquidity, if we are able to get the risk mitigants well articulated to these agencies in our projects, maybe we'll have a better chance of winning their support. Given the way the share price of the company is and the way the market cap has melted, it is very important that we have to discover our rightful place in the pecking order of economic value creation. And I'm acutely conscious that this cannot happen unless each one of us at our project sites are committed to discovering value. It's very interesting to note that all that everybody does in the company, be whatever function it may be, has a certain connect to the value drivers of the company. we need to figure out a way to make all our tasks, and I think it is a more leadership task that I am addressing. We'll have to break it into small digestible modules for various people, the rank and file of the organization, to perform. And it will be the leadership task to connect all the dots and make it a whole economic proposal for the company to bank on. If we expect every single worker in the site to be worried about EVA, we will get nowhere. In fact, we will confuse ourselves. I think what we need to worry about is the value creation being broken into very, very small pieces of tasks. And these tasks should be completely digitized so that we are able to monitor and measure. Because as they say, if something cannot be measured, that won't get done. So it is important to measure the value creation, to monitor them at their granular level and drive focus. Very simply put, fundamentals of the business are very simple. We start the business with a box full of cash. We then enter into a contract. We give some money upfront to vendors. We commit cost. We mobilize a site. We pay workers. We pay subcontractors, and all of that we do. And to convert all of this into an acceptable progress and a certified invoice, and we collect cash back. So it's very simply cash to cash cycle. So our task ahead would be to discover projects which has a limited cash to cash cycle rather than a very elongated cash to cash cycle. One of the capital allocation decisions that I battle with on a daily basis is how much of working capital do you allocate? Is 27% good enough? Is it not enough? How much is enough? What is the value this allocation provides me? Because we all should realize one fundamental thing. Any money locked in working capital generates zero return for the shareholders. So, in a way, 50,000 crores of net working capital, I am saying net because we do manage to drag the vendors and suppliers and customer calculation, which technically speaking is not the right thing to do, but in any case, the net working capital does reckon all of that. If 50,000 crores we are able to release, hypothetically speaking, it may not be possible in one go, but if you're able to release source of profit to the company. So, the understanding that cash locked up in working capital does not represent progress. It actually represents value destruction. So just make sure that we have this sales over invoicing devil off our backs. And there will be, in our business, there will be a certain portion of that is inevitable, but try to minimize this. The second thing I think we need to do is we need to focus on resources of all kinds, not only money. Are we right sized in our organization? Is the pyramid right? Are we having too many top heavy people chasing too little pyramid? People at the ground, and the supervision ratio has deteriorated over time. I think we'll have to get back to the level of supervision which is affordable and which will be value.
RSR, your voice is getting broken.
Sorry, let me mute and unmute again. Is it any better now?
Yeah, much better, RSR.
Yes,
Please
yes,
continue.
sir.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm sorry about the bandwidth at my residence. It's quite poor. But anyway, what I was trying to say, the organization is ready. Because as it is, we have, I do not know, 700, 800, one number of sites. And every customer expects our A team to work in that site. How many A-class teams can we assemble? Because we owe it to the customer expects from us. And if that is a constraint, then we need to worry about the commitments that we take. So at some point in time, balancing scale with number is something that is inevitable, and PT&D needs to do it. In fact, in new countries especially, I do understand we have to start with $10 million, $15 million, etc. But we cannot drive ourselves to a situation where we don't have enough resources to execute. And this is my constant worry, that there's right sizing the organization and having as many A teams as possible is something that we need to focus on, and that's only what is going to help us to grow this business in future. Obviously, I think we also have to worry about how far these international forays compensate the order inflow positions of the domestic will, for example, slowing Middle East be compensated by the rising Africa? Will Far East, ASEAN, will it prove to its potential and move away from $50 million, $75 million to $500 million? These are questions that we need to address as we look at growth. But fundamentally, and the most importantly, first we need to take care of the short term. I think we need to deal with the first quarter well. We need to deal with the following quarter well, so that end of the year we have some respectability. It is extremely hurting to see that if the lockdown were to continue for 2 months, and we did some scenario analysis, the profit of the company collapses. And God forbid, if there is going to be another wave of pandemic leading to some more lockdowns, we could well stare at loss, something that we have not seen since the year we listed. So it is a formidable motivation for all of us to make sure that we fight this and get the company to its respectability. There's a lot expected from the market out of us. We think we are one of those successful survivors, and many reports say that L&T is expected to emerge stronger from this pandemic. If these pronouncements were to be true, then each one of us have a big responsibility. And I think in the past, we have demonstrated our ability to be responsible in growth. I don't think this time would be any different. I'm supremely confident. I'm very humbled by the very strong opening message that Madhav Das gave. It was so positive and full of confidence. I'm sure this confidence is not misplaced, and it is actually a good assessment of conditions on the ground. I wish all of you all the very best. Stay safe and all the best.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your cautious advice to successfully overcome various issues during these tough times. Now, moving forward, we have few questions which L&Tites have raised us. The first question is for SNS sir. Sir, owing to anti-China sentiment, most of the Western countries are likely to move their manufacturing base from China to India. This may create opportunities for various ICs of L&T, but in the context of PT&D IC, should we look of restarting our industrial electrification BU?
The industrial electrification BU was doing major jobs for steel plants and power plants and various other big industrial areas. I think I gave the example of moving up the value chain from 11 kV to 1200 kV. We have moved up the value chain now as PT&D. We are considered it's probably the largest power transmission distribution EPC in the globe, if I can say that. I don't think any other company comes near to this nearly $3 billion anywhere in the world, purely as a project company. It could be suppliers and projects, but not purely as a project company. We have succeeded in this mission because where we felt the value addition was not there, competition was very high, we don't had any extra to the job from others' point of view, we need to move away. That's how we moved away from industrial electrification. When industries from China move into India, this will be small factories or even maybe large factories. The kind of work that you do there will be lighting and some certain amount of HVLV systems, but nothing to that kind of scale which requires an expertise far beyond what you have now. So I would doubt whether that kind of opportunity would present. There could be factories from some of the multinationals who want to have a second base because of the supply chain issues and others wanting to come to India, but this would be very specialized factories from the limited point of view. I'm not sure whether we should look at it. But what could happen is some of the supply chain, which is at the moment from China, etc., could shift to India. And therefore, your import duty could reduce, your logistical costs can reduce, and so on and so forth. You may get some more world-class products within India, and therefore, even for your supplies in Middle East, Far East, which sometimes depend on a multinational source out of China, you could get that from India now. You could see very high-end manufacturing moving to India, and therefore your supply base could get enlarged. and therefore I would see a value addition from that point of view, from your supply chain and your input point of view, and not from your output point of view to do a factory kind of industrial electrification. What you're out, you should stay out, get on with life and new things.
Thank you, sir. The next question is for TMD, sir. Considering the labor crisis can come in a bigger way in terms of availability and productivity of workers, can we go for intense mechanization to have an edge over the competitors? If so, your take on this particular intense mechanization point.
I think this has been a topic which SNS touched extensively in his speech. He brought the concept of modularization, he brought the concept of precast, he brought the concept of improving our productivity. I think it's important for one and all of us in PTD that as we go into remote areas, and with this migrant labor is going to be an issue, we don't know when it can recur and when it can affect our jobs. It is necessary that we collectively start looking at the best practices and how do we reduce our dependency on labor and look at mechanization. We have started implementing small things at many sites. I think we will have to now take it up in a big way. We will have to create task force, ensure that in every business of ours, like in UPD, in transmission line, in substation, what is it that we can use to modularize? What is it we can use to mechanize is necessary. So to me, this is the highest priority as we go forward. And hence, this will be one of the key areas where we will be in touch constantly with our site to ensure that we keep innovating, because this is something which will be done in the open. You will have an edge only for 5 to 6 months before the competitors learn what you have done. And hence, it has to be a constant, sustainable process. And I'm sure that with the teams are...
Madhav, you are also cut.
You're also stuck.
Sorry, I think there's been some disconnect.
Yeah, you can talk now. We can hear you.
Yeah. You have to connect. I think, as I said, that I think this will be a constant process as we go forward, and mechanization should be the only way we should be looking at how we progress, because the availability of labor is going to be a large issue as we go forward. And we will put up a task force and ensure that we have new practices coming up in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir, SNS sir, the next question is for you. India's GDP growth is projected to be marginal, and a steep fall in oil prices may reduce our prospects in Middle East. While Africa remains one of our target segments for PTND, what is your advice on spreading business to developed countries?
I think we have to chew what we can. You know, it's good to be boisterous and to say, let's get there, let's get here. As I said, PTND has done a pioneering role within L&T to get into new geographies, new continents, and it's been good and steady at it. We got to yet find out what Africa is all about. We've done 300 million, profitability still at about 5-6% because of the huge overheads therein. Unless we get into about 400-500 million, the overheads cost doesn't go away. We got to get into that. Can't continue to make that 7-8%. At least somewhere we have to make 10%, and hopefully we have to move into that. It's going to take another 3-4 years before we do that. Far East will never make that because it's a pretty competitive market. We tried going into CIS. Vijay Babu was posted there for nearly a year. We saw some opportunities here and there, but few we tried. We lost out to some Indian companies and to some Chinese or Russian companies by 10-15% margin. Then I said, pull out of it, because there's no point in wasting a very good person sitting in Alma-Ata when competition is 10-15% below the best price that you can give. And the opportunities were limited too. And therefore, we got to assess it as we go by. There were talks in between me and Madhav as whether we should enter Brazil. One of our clients in India desperately wanted us to take us to Brazil. I said, even to go to that place takes me 30 hours. I'm not going there. And then we did have a person in the United States, in Houston, who was trying to sell some of our tower members, etc. When we did the costing, it came out nice. And finally, to pre-qualify and get it going and to go through the US laws and customs, etc., was a nightmare, and we didn't go through with that. So it's not that we are not attempted it. We have had some experimental attempts. But I'm not still confident about our abilities to go to the more advanced Western nations. They do say in United States there could be a huge boom in the electricity power generation and transmission because of the very outdated system of transmission that they have. But we got to have the ability to go and do it. One cannot have the ability by being purely adventurous and then sitting in some office room here and saying, well, let's go to the United States. There are different laws there, the different customs there, the different working habits there, the different way to deal with labor and such other situations there. And for an EPC company, it's a far out cry. I've had friends in US and many of the big companies who, whenever I go there, tell me, come join with us, let's do joint ventures, etc. But that's a very advanced market, very advanced rules and regulations. We don't know anything about such. So I think we got to stick to a knitting. I think we're done fairly well. Let's go by that. And some of these things, though I'm considered aggressive, I'm very conservative in some of my thinkings. So let's take it step by step. And whenever we have the confidence, maybe it's me, maybe it's a generation after me or the generation after that, I don't know. But I will do what I think is right from that point of view. We're now in Africa, Far East, we'll go by that.
Sir. Arisa, sir, the next question is for you. The recent announcement by Finance Minister suggested that the distribution sector will revolve around PPP model, and to be more specific, with a distribution franchise model. Now, what is your advice for PT&D to venture into this business?
Well, my advice is don't put your money onto this. Don't put capital, because I think one of the biggest risks we run, and I might be sounding not politically correct, one of the biggest risks we run is government as a counterparty. So any concession, and we have learned it the hard way, any concession that involves a government agency at the other end, we get in the bureaucracy, and because we are L&T, we keep funding even on their behalf and moving things forward. While privatization is good, I don't think we should be the first one to jump into it. Let somebody else jump into it, test the water, and in case it is going to make some economic, commercial sense, we will evaluate it at a later date.
Thank you, sir.
But incidentally, the first priority for the company at a group level also, and I want to mention this to all of you, is when we take decisions to invest, we don't think enough about what it takes to divest. Always, we have to be clear of our exit route before we make any entry into any business activity or any contract for that matter. Unless closure is clearly kept in view, entry will be disastrous. And I think PPP is one classic case where in the past we have owned airports, we have owned roads, we have owned ports, we are now owning metro, a power plant. We are actually finding it extremely difficult to get others interested in these 30-year and 50-year concessions. So let us watch how the others play this out before we take a call.
Thank you, sir. TMD, sir, the next question is for you. PT&D has quickly adapted to the techniques of work from home, whether it is a drawing approval or over a digital meeting or a factory acceptance test by customer on smart glass. PT&D has emerged to be, learning on these technologies. Do you see work from home to be a productive and sustainable method in the long run for certain category of people who are not directly responsible for execution of work at site?
Let me put it this way. I think when the COVID came and we said that work from home, it was entirely a new concept. We were now, what shall I say, putting our foot into new uncharted territories. Okay, but I think that first 2 months, to a great extent, it was successful because it was more of back office working. Now, let us be very clear. PTD, or for that matter, construction, the whole ICs, we are entirely dependent on our site activities. We are the back office, the head office, the cluster offices, the design, everything is the back office of the whole thing, which helps to run the site. Now, when this 2 months of work from home was going on, our site activities were practically at standstill. So we were able to do a lot of things, which was able to catch up with a lot of things, do our design, making up things which had lost ground. But we were not really testing out whether we were really supporting our site activities. So I will not really say that we have tested, we have come successfully. For me, it is just the starting point. And at the highest apex level of L&T, I think there has been a lot of discussions going on whether it is going to be sustainable, whether we can look at some set of people working from home. I think under the leadership of SNS and CRSR, we have, I think, created a small team to look at the benefits, look at the advantages, and really do a proper debate on this, whether some groups can go into work from home, and that it is being really looked in seriously, because it has got a lot of other ramifications also. It can help us to conserve space, it can help us to reduce cost, it can help us to get good talent who has got multiple problems but can also work at it. So I think there is a very pragmatic way we are looking at the whole issue. Yes, whether we can shift certain back office of design, certain of supply chain, these are all being debated. But I think we will take a calculated call once we do a detailed analysis of how things can pan out. And then we will, this is an option which is not being written off. It is being really looked on to say that, yes, we have to do a real good evaluation of the whole process and then come to a conclusion whether, yes, certain things can be shifted. So I think I will put it at that way, because unless we start working at full engine and see how the work from home concept will work, we just cannot come to a conclusion that this is the best practice or this is not a practice which can be applied to us. Because we are finally a brick and mortar company. We have to understand that. Whereas many organizations are digital based and they can do things. So I will put it, I'll leave it at that we have not written it out, but we at the same time, we are doing an evaluation at the highest level with the right people looking at the best pros and cons, and then we will come to an once it is debated and agreed upon, there will be a decision.
Thank you, sir.
We have to get granular. There is no magic portion that we can apply. Working capital comes down